I'd like to thank everybody for coming to this special meeting of the Board of Education, Forest Hills, on June 30th, 2020. This acts as the call to order. Next up, roll call, Ms. Cropper.
Mrs. Barber, Ms.
Here.
Joyce, Dr.
Here.
Rasmussen,
Here.
Mrs. Taylor, Dr.
Here.
Heights.
Here. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise and join me and look at Scott's picture for the flag to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, are we all still here? Elizabeth, you look frozen in mine.
I'm here.
Okay, so can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Ms. Cropper?
Ms. Joyce,
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen,
Yes.
Mrs. Barber,
Yes.
Mrs. Taylor,
Yes.
Dr. Heights.
Yes. So the agenda is not a large one. We have just one item on it, and that is board discussion, discussing the future of the Anderson High School logo. Just a quick history on it. The Anderson High School started in 1929. It was originally named the Comets. The colors, as I understand it, have always been black and orange, as many of the students were from Withrow, and Withrow, as I understand it, gave the old uniforms to the new school. Charles Brown then renamed the school the Redskins in 1936. He was a proud graduate of Miami University, and many of the faculty were from Miami University, so it was also 1936. So there's not a lot of record of any discussion or how that came about, but it was a principal decision. For the next 40 years or so, the Anderson has proudly been called the Redskins. In 1972, the American Indian movement gained strength, late 60s, early 70s. And in 1972, the first university as I understand, in the United States, changed their name from the Indians ultimately to the Cardinal. And somewhat ironically, that was my alma mater, Stanford University. Interesting notes that they had apparently some student input to rename it the Robber Barons, which was soundly rejected by the Board of Trustees. And there were some other more jovial ones. Ultimately, it became the Cardinal. So then here we had through the 70s and 80s, in 1976, Turpin opened. And then in the 80s, when I was in high school, they were known as the Redskins. And my recollection is of not a lot of discussion or anything along those lines. Then and the 90s came, and we started 3 successive committees looking at that at the Mascot in 1999, 2003, and then again 2 years ago in 2018. In the meantime, there we have had some changes. The Cleveland Indians have gotten rid of their logo. On the other hand, the Washington Redskins are still the Washington Redskins. So there has been a lot of debate on both sides, and frankly, that's why we're here today. So I was going to move into kind of the information. Does anybody else want to add anything to that? Okay. So here we are in 2020. Obviously, things have changed a lot in the last 2 months, 6 months, but certainly in the last 3 or 4 months with COVID and the whole reason that we're here in a virtual setting. I would like to address that. I mean, we are in a virtual setting. We are, the way the world's going right now, we may be in a virtual setting for a significant amount of time. And so while I think we would all, I know we would all rather be in an open session face to face and doing this around a table, that is not going to happen for this or really any other issue that faces the board for the foreseeable future. I don't know. I have a lot of information down. Elizabeth, you want to start here, or anybody? I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, I will say, so we've gotten a lot of questions about why now? Why are we picking this up right now when it has to be a virtual meeting and we can't do in person? And there's so many other things going on and pressures on the district. Obviously, there are things happening in our world right now that make this a relevant issue. And the why now, Dee Dee, do you want to talk about the why now for you and why this got brought to the forefront for the board? You're muted.
Yeah, it started, I'd say it's been over 2 weeks, and just seeing what was going on television, I got a lot of phone calls, got a lot of emails. And as a Black woman, I've had some experiences. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but let me just start with someone sent me an email containing a quote written by Brené Brown. And it said, in order to empathize with someone's experience, you must be willing to believe them as they see it and not how you imagine their experience to be. No one can tell me what my experience has been like as a Black woman. It's just the way it is. So how, with that in mind, how can we tell a group of people of a different culture that something is not offensive when they deem it so? Some of them may not be offended, but what about those who are? If it's offensive, it must go. And these are just my feelings. And I don't think there's been a question at all about how I feel about this issue. So, it's about every child, every day. As a community, we have to consider the feelings of each student. Now, we have received emails from students asking us to change the mascot, quite a few, and they do count. And we're here to do what's best for students. So we must always do what's in the best interest of students. When action is called for, we must take action. And I understand change is hard, but sometimes we just have to make changes. Now, I was thinking about this. If I say something offensive, say to Forrest, I don't realize it's offensive. But I say something to him, and he tells me, "Hey, D, I didn't appreciate that. That was offensive." Well, you better believe I'm going to apologize and I'm going to make some changes. And I'm never going to make that mistake with him again. And hopefully it would teach me how to be careful about what I say to people in terms of how it makes them feel. We always have to think about how someone else feels. We live in a great community. We have great people. And I know we all mean well. We all want what's best for kids. But we always have to look at those people or those groups of people who don't feel like they've been treated as American citizens.
That's our why now. We weren't even planning on that. I didn't even tell her I was going to put her on the spot like that. But as a board, what happened is, we were coming up on our June meeting, And quite frankly, she wanted to bring it up. And so, out of respect, I mean, how can you look at a fellow board member and not bring this to the table? We can't do that as a community or as a board. So, it may seem like we are blocking people out. It may seem like we rushed this, but it was honestly to try to get it in for last night. And, you know, all of the emails started rolling in, and it was just too much for last night. Last night was meant for business. This is meant for this very important social issue. So, you know, I just wanted to clear the air on any feelings that maybe there's not transparency, because we have received probably over 1,000 emails at this point. And I know I have read every single one. I've tried to respond to every single one. And I'm sure the rest of my fellow board members have. So we're seeing what you're saying. This isn't happening in a vacuum for sure. Does anyone else want to comment on that?
Mrs. Barber, may I make a comment real quick, please? I just saw in my own screen that I had been off, and I didn't know I was off video. I want to assure people that I heard everything and was involved in the meeting, and I apologize. I did not know that my camera was off, so that's all I wanted to say. I've been here from the very beginning, and I've heard all of the information. I'm sorry.
I'll go next. I kind of wrote this down because I have a lot of emotions about it too. So I just want to make sure I get my point across in a very concise manner. So I'm focused on getting 7,300 students in this district back to school safely in the fall. Focusing on this discussion now is disappointing to me. I do not believe it is once again time to discuss the Redskin issue. We had our June board meeting last night, and if any of you paid attention, you know we do not have a plan solidified for returning to school. Greg and Scott made good points about waiting for the governor's directive, but the governor's plans should not be a surprise to us. Turns out other schools actually have plans. Cincinnati Public posted their plans. They posted costs associated with their plans. Fairbanks Local Schools posted theirs up to OSBA website that I go to regularly on June 3rd. We are still working on our plans though. Let me say again, we do not know what our return to school plans are, and we certainly don't know how much more we will have to spend to bring those plans to fruition. This district does have a spending problem. So we're going to spend tonight to discuss the Redskin symbol, however. You want me as a parent, an accountant, and now a school board member to pick who I think is right. Those who believe the Redskin name is demeaning, or those who have pride in their heritage. I truly do not see how I can make that determination. Frankly, I'm not sure how a lot of these people that are writing in to advocate for the change can make that determination for other people too. If Native American people say they take pride in their name and they want to educate rather than eradicate, how can I say that they're wrong? But we're going to solve all of our inequities tonight. Okay, but I hope we can get back to planning for all of our students to get back to school, regardless of their race, their gender, their religion, whatever. That's my focus, is all kids. And I do believe education is a priority for all the kids. And that's really where we need to be focused.
Patty, you are not focused on all children. You are not focused on students. You are not focused on this district and getting students to return to campus safely. They are not safe when they are dealing with racism. You do not get to tell our students of color whether or not they should feel safe in our buildings. And you know very well, and I'm very concerned that you're misleading the public right now, because you know that Scott, Greg, Mike, they have plans. They have not snapped their fingers and said exactly which one they want to go with. And you know that. You know that, so do not mislead the public, please. You're trying to divert attention away from something that is incredibly serious, and what you're doing and the line of content that you're taking us down is dangerous, and it is hurtful to every student of color in our district, every community member in our district that is a person of color, and every single faculty and staff member who work in our district, period.
All right, Leslie, yeah, let's So what is your overall take on where we are right now and where we need to go?
My take, before I do have a couple of talking points that I want to make very clear. But I want to ask everybody a question. Patty, Elizabeth, Forrest, Dee Dee, have we had a board discussion about this issue yet?
No.
Unmute.
Right now.
I would respectfully ask that you unmute yourselves and individually respond. Elizabeth, have we had a board discussion yet?
We have not. That's what tonight's for.
Thank you. Dee Dee, can you please do the same?
No, we have not had a discussion.
Forrest, please.
No, this is that's
Patty.
what the purpose of the
Nope.
meeting is.
So to be clear, Ms. Taylor just said, no, we have not had a board discussion. So now that that's out of the way, this is what I want to say. We've been elected to leadership positions. That comes with a great deal of responsibility. To every single student that walks through the halls of our schools, that also includes every single janitor, teacher, administrative assistant, principal, whoever that walks through our schools. We have a responsibility to them. Now, I have a couple of questions that I want to follow up with. One, if we make this change, will we be more or less inclusive? Quite simply, the answer is more, and we all know that. Will we appear more or less welcoming, safe, there's the key word, and empathetic to students? The answer is yes. Now, we received so many emails, and I want to quote one that frankly made me smile and say, yes, why are we talking about this in 2020? A gentleman wrote and said to all of us, I have one question for you all to ask. If you invite a Native American over for dinner, would you say, honey, our skin is coming over for dinner? You would not. If it's so honorable, why wouldn't you describe them that way to their face? The National Congress of American Indians represents 500 plus tribal nations who have all called for the end of the term our skins and the use of Native American stereotypes. Now, we have heard from NAGA, the Native American Guardian Association. I'm a researcher. I have made that very clear since last summer when I joined this stuff. So what I did is reached out to the National Congress of American Indians, and I reached out to NAGA, and I wanted them to be very clear on who they represent. What I was met with NAGA was combative, and they were unwilling to tell me who they represented. And I asked again, I'm on a fact-finding mission because I can't just take the word of one organization over the other. That is not how empirical evidence, data, and support is arrived at. I have to know who you're representing. Otherwise, Mike and Greg could form their own organization and we're supposed to take them at face value. We need to know who they represent. Finally, I got an answer. They represent individuals who pay a membership. What I was instructed from the National Congress of American Indians, I spoke directly with the director of that association, is that NAGA does not represent Cherokee Nation, which it seems in the email that I received from a Mr. Tony Henson, it sort of implied that the attorneys and everyone else can deal with the semantics and whatnot of that, but they're two very contradicting statements. And every person who wants to make a real decision, like to really examine this issue, needs to consider the sources. I mean, frankly, it's that simple. And there should be transparency. Patty, you and I both ran on being transparent. And I think we should all agree that NCAI and NAGA should be transparent in who they're representing. That is not a hard ask. Now, we have had all the research sent to us. We've done it on our own. Early in my career, I researched stereotypes and the impacts of such stereotypes in the assimilation and marginalization of Latinx stereotypes on that community. They all find the same thing: negative impacts. It's empirical. It is widely accepted. And yet here we are. And this issue is not a popularity contest. While I have been absolutely moved to tears by the hundreds, we've cracked 1,000 of emails that we've received in favor of change, and even those who have written in support of keeping the mascot. Issues of racism, ultimately, issues of race, we're basically saying the issue of racism, based on the degree to which people are offended, is a contest. It is not. It is racism, period. We are not going to vote on how many of us are willing to accept the use of racial slurs or stereotypes. That is dangerous and demeaning to Black, Indigenous people of color, period. If any board member is compelled to tell you that they're willing to continue this and that they think that's creating a safe environment for our students, I am here to tell you that they have failed the oath that they took. They are negligent in that oath, and they are failing our students, faculty, staff, and community members who are Black, Indigenous people of color. We are a school district, plain and simple, and we must keep an environment that is safe and inclusive for our students to learn. Now, we have been called out by the NAACP. We have been called out by NAIA. I have a list of, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but I think it's over 500 resolutions that American Indian tribes have, where they have declared saying this is not acceptable. It is time we listen to the voices of Black, Indigenous people of color. It is not the other voices who want to decide they shouldn't be allowed to be offended. This is leadership, and it's difficult. But the reality of what we're discussing is very simple. It really is. It comes down to being safety. It comes down to issues of safety. It comes down to inclusiveness. It comes down to living what we say we are going to do. It is time to align our actions with our values. And if you are one of those, or if you are choosing to be negligent in the oath that we took, then maybe you need to consider the reason you're on this board and whether or not you actually understand how to serve students. And that's what I would like to say for now. Thank you, Forrest.
I did want to add something back to that. You mentioned a bunch of research. I only got, to my knowledge, those 3 documents that Scott, you had Dee Dee forward to us.
Patty, you were not,
and there
you
was
didn't
something
take the
else.
time to do your own research?
No, I want the district's research.
Right, because you're questioning
Forest Hills School District research. You mentioned that, and that's I'm down with that. Through experience, that's exactly what I do. I research a lot of stuff. I do. I mean, I do. If you attend the board meetings, I think you can see I'm very prepared in what I do. But what I don't see is I was looking for the district's research. That's what we're talking about, is this district. And so
you understand
I didn't see
that
very much at all.
racism is a
so what I'm
global
looking
issue.
for is the district's research to show where we have areas, because that's what
Patty,
we're trying
did you
to do.
read
is
the
if
care
we
team
have
report?
if you give me a
panel?
moment, if we have areas where we are not performing properly, that we are not giving the students what we need, that's what I'm looking for, because you have to identify it, right, through formal research. How do you know how to fix it? You have to identify it in order to know what your next steps are. I don't see that. If I missed it, please let me know. But I have not seen formal research that says this is what we
Patty, are
researched.
you
This is
are you
how we
going on
researched
record?
it.
Are you going
These
on
were the
record right now
findings.
saying
If
that
you
we do
just
not
let me
have
finish,
issues of
then you can
racism
begin
in
again.
this district?
And
Answer
then
me.
from the research, then you have, these are the next steps. That is what I'm asking for. I have not seen that from the district.
From the district, we received a care report. Community members who are out there, and I cried when I read it. I cried in my daughter's bed in the room next door as I read what students at Nagel, Turpin, and Anderson had to say that they experienced. Now, Patty Taylor, I want you to go on record right now because this is what it sounded like. And you tell me yes or no. Forrest, let me say this, please. Are you saying
Let's be
that
respectful,
you
guys. Let's be
want proof that
respectful.
racism exists in our district? You want that kind of proof and evidence and research to prove that racism exists? Is that what you're asking?
Two things. The 3 documents that were sent from the CARE, I mean, I would challenge you guys to send it out to the public. Let them read it. Please do that. I think that is a very wonderful thing to see what they
Do you know how dangerous
read
that is
from
to the
ours.
students?
But the other part is this. You want to actually make a change, right? A positive change. So you have to identify what is happening properly, what is not happening properly, in order to identify the things that you need to continue to do and what you need to start doing. That's what I'm asking for.
And I'm asking you quite simply, frankly, do you believe there is not an issue of racism in our district based on what you have seen? Yes or no?
The few pieces of information the district has provided me on Forest Hills District does not lead me to conclude we have significant issues, because if we did, that CARES team would have been addressing them.
Did you read the CARES record, Forrest? I think you're going to read it, right? So we're all clear that Patty doesn't believe we have.
Why don't
Again,
we
let's be
shift to
respectful of
reading
each other's.
the letters?
Elizabeth,
Adam, could you pull up the CARES letter? We have
That's not the
3
CARES letter, it's the research.
Yeah,
Those
I
3
know. Well, so,
documents.
but the research, I believe it had student information on it, and that's why it can't be shared. So I guess maybe names could be removed or something like that. But okay, so a lot's been happening the past few weeks. We've been receiving a lot of communication from a lot of different people and different groups, and lest anyone think we are not being transparent, we gathered everything together tonight, and we want to share it and let everybody read it and see for themselves. So the district's care team was set up, I believe, 2017 or 18, to put a specific focus on diversity and inclusion in Forest Hills. It's a group of students, administrators, teachers, I also believe parents, and they were tasked with kind of digging into the culture of Forest Hills. I think they focused on Turpin, Anderson, and Nagel. Greg, nod your head if I'm correct. Okay, good. Okay, so we received this letter from CARES on June 24th, directed to Mr. Prebles because they are a committee, one of his committees, and I believe they were pretty reluctant to put this forward because they recognize that their purpose is really for education. It is not to do something like this, but they felt compelled to do this considering what's happening in the world. So I'm going to read it. Dear Mr. Prebles, it is with the utmost respect that the Forest Hills School District Care Cornerstone team writes you requesting immediate action to retire the Redskin mascot. From its inception, CARE became an acronym composed of our mission: competence, advocacy, relationships, and engagement and empowerment. As a group of over 50 Forest Hills teachers, staff, and administrators, the CARE team has engaged in rigorous discussion, reflection, and professional development for over 2 years. We have actively worked with each of our school communities to unpack the complexities around race, inclusion, equity, diversity, belonging, implicit bias, microaggressions, privilege, and power. This has been powerful, sometimes uncomfortable, but necessary work. In an effort to maintain forward progress and move closer toward our vision of a truly inclusive community, we urge you to initiate the necessary steps with the board to retire a symbol, the Redskin mascot, that stands in direct conflict with our team and district's stated mission and values. As an educational institution, we serve all children regardless of race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identification, or exceptionality. We are challenged to make progress while continuing to use a symbol associated with a history of discrimination, racism, exclusion, appropriation, and violence against any group of people. A mascot should unify, promoting acceptance and togetherness. Regardless of initial intent, a mascot should not be divisive, and it should certainly not distract from our school's successes by causing its values to be questioned. At this current time, Forest Hills has an opportunity to alter the way people view the district by affirming its position in this pivotal moment for change and healing in America. We ask you to use your power and influence to prevent the marginalization and harm of any individual, not only in our own schools, but also in the communities we encounter through countless regional events. We are in an opportune moment in history to make a change to the Anderson mascot that represents the children, families, staff members, and community we serve now and in the future. As an advocate for both the district and its stakeholders, your leadership to move to retire the Redskin mascot would stand in support of the Forest Hills vision of striving to ensure success for all students. We understand this decision comes with many complexities, and we also welcome the opportunity to help navigate those challenges by continuing to develop care. We are committed educators standing in solidarity with our families, students, and staff to move this important work forward. Thank you, representatives of the Forest Hills School District Care Cornerstone team. Next, I will read a letter that we received from the Cincinnati chapter of the NAACP. This was dated June 24th. Dear members of the board, there has been much debate surrounding the current Anderson High School mascot, Redskins. The National Congress of American Indians has repeatedly implored you to remove and replace the offensive Native American mascot. They have consistently voiced objection and has fallen on deaf ears. Let it be known, the Cincinnati NAACP is in full support of the request to remove the offensive name from all school property and materials, and for the school to immediately cease and desist any sale of spiritware with the current mascot name or likeness. The time has come for Anderson school officials and decision makers to do the right thing. The school mascot should reflect a sense of pride and values of the Anderson community. It must not be racially offensive. This is a chance for school officials to be on the right side of history and honor the many requests to remove the offensive name. Simply, it is the right thing to do. Sincerely, Robert E. Richardson, President. The final letter I'm going to read showed up on our doorsteps this week, June 28th. And I'm going to try not to get emotional with this one because as I got involved in the school board over the past 20 years, I know some of these people pretty well, and it means a lot that they would try to come alongside us right now. They, more than anyone, know how difficult this position is because they faced this. they stared down the barrel of this gun just like we are tonight. So let me read this. To the members of the Forest Hills Local School District Board of Education, as past members of the Forest Hills Local School District Board of Education, we, the undersigned, respectfully request that the current members of the board vote to retire the Anderson High School Redskins mascot. In many ways, each of us wish we had done more to resolve this issue during our tenures on the board. Times change and we change with them. We have seen recently that silence is compliance. We can no longer hide behind the veil of tradition to avoid this difficult decision. Respectfully, Julie Bissinger, Jim Fruman, Tracy Hubner, Rich Newman, and Eric Okerson.
I'd like to respond to the first letter from the CARES team, because we did get that. But
Uh-huh.
I'd very much like to send out those 3 letters to the public so that they can see it. And I'm pretty confident there's no names on there, because when I had asked follow-up questions, Scott thought I asked for names, and I did not. There's no name that I want, set out there. But that 2018, mind you, when you sent those 3 letters, there was nothing on there. All it said was Dee Dee asked for these things to be sent. So I had no context about anything. I didn't know anything about what it was. So it turns out, like in 2018, the CARES team performed individual discussions with small but diverse groups of students. The summary was poorly written and documented, but that's another part. But here are some of the results: that the students believe other students are not being disciplined for offensive words or actions. LGBT issues are not being addressed. There's inconsistency in treatment for bad behavior. All the schools do not discipline consistently. Teachers need to be more educated on how to deal with diversity. And finally, I did not see one comment on all those pages that asked about the Redskin name and how it makes them feel. So I understand you have that one, but I think it would be very helpful to have the public see the results of that study that was done in the form that it was presented to us. And the other part, the letter, let me find it. Well, basically here, to Julie Bissinger, Jim Fruman, Tracy Hubner, Rich Newman, and Eric Okerson, former board members who did write to us. You were on the board and had the opportunity to do something. You did nothing and avoided making the hard decisions. You kicked this issue, your irresponsible financial decisions, and other difficult decisions to this board. You have some nerve weighing in now. Those are my comments to those 3 pieces of information.
Elizabeth, I'd like to make a comment as well. I think that it's incredibly important that we show people the grace to grow and learn, because as we have seen and heard many times, when you know better, you do better. Just like the Anderson High School football player that emailed us today and said that he was vocally supportive in 2018 of retaining the mascot. And as he learned after that, he gained life experience, and he understood that caused pain to others. So with regard to the past board members, I also want to actually thank them for knowing better and now saying, guess what? I was wrong, because there is power in admitting when you were wrong. And I have immense respect for anyone who can say, you know what, I made a mistake and this was wrong. With regard to the care letter, I want to make one, and I'll try to be short, comment. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if there was a question about the "our skin" term on there. It doesn't, because it is all about racial issues. Whether we're not going to pull out one little tiny, or not, it's not tiny, but we're not going to pull out one point and say, well, that was missing, because the reality is you can't do that in racism. It is holistic. It is, in fact, just today, right, at the Freedom Center, we had people, public officials trying to declare that racism is in fact a public health issue. So it doesn't matter one bit that there was not a question specifically related to the mascot, especially when you consider that the panels consisted of not just Anderson High School students. There were Turpin High School students on there and Nagel Middle School students as well. So, I mean, frankly, whatever, that's almost moot to me, because anybody who understands racism knows that, it's holistic. But
Or
Right.
But
can
the
I
point
just,
would just be, is the CARES team dealing with all those other issues too?
well,
I mean,
they should.
that's what the purpose would be, is to identify areas that students are saying there's a need, we're looking for it. that is not what I have seen from.
Wow. I've seen
The
quite a few
information.
emails from
Didi,
students.
yeah, Didi,
The other one.
Yeah, real quick, you know, Leslie's point about people growing and learning. If you, and Patty, I'm sure you looked at all those emails. There were a ton of emails from people who graduated years ago saying that they thought it was okay. They thought it was okay. And here, 15, 10, 20 years later, they're saying, now I understand. So, you know, we all grow. And if you count those emails, it would be a ton of people who grew.
I want to follow up on that because I do have the perspective of having been on the 2018 committee, and we really dug in 2018. We that was when we had all the public meetings, and we received probably 6 months worth of emails. And one of the main reasons I'm willing to be sitting on this call having this discussion is because the tide has significantly turned from 2018. It was about even in what we heard from people 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. It's weighted this time. We received a significantly more from people who are saying what Didi just recounted, and Forrest is going to pull some samples from both sides, but just the perspective, things have changed. Things have changed.
So along those lines, I'm going to go ahead and speak my piece here. So we all have different perspectives, and my perspective goes back a long way. I have, I think, 20 or 30 Anderson Redskin relatives. Um, it's for the majority, and I am going to go over some of the things that have been brought up as far as the emails and things go. For the people that went to school in the 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and still feel strongly that this is about what NAGA talks about. It's about nobility. It's about bravery. No one picks a weak mascot. No one picks something that they don't look up to. So I know there's a lot of people out there that are not racist, who are very proud of their school that they went to, very proud of the things they did as an Anderson Redskin, and have pushed that forward, and that is part of their family dynamic in Anderson Township. That's the way it is. That's one of the things that make our community great, is we do have a long history there. Now, I want to go through, we've talked a lot, and one of the things with this is I know we have a lot of people watching that have not done the research, have not read the things. We're saying NCAI, NAGA, all these things that are that we speak of because we've been reading it and we've been looking into it, but the person off the street doesn't really know. So what I have, I do have the NCAI. So is a national Congress of American Indians. And I want to read both their statement and the North American Guardian Association statement. So the NCAI is the nation's oldest, largest, and most representative American Indian and Alaska Native Advocacy Association. NCAI has long held a clear position against derogatory and harmful stereotypes of Native people, including sports mascots in media and popular culture. In 1968, NCAI launched a campaign to address stereotypes of Native people in popular culture and media, as well as in sports. Since this effort began, there have been a great deal of progress made in support to end the era of harmful Indian mascots in sports. NCAI's position is clear, longstanding, and deeply rooted in our 70 years as a leading voice for the Indian country. We advocate for and protect the civil rights, social justice, and racial equity of all Native people in all parts of American society. And it's a much longer statement, but the Native American Guardians Association has on their page, 14, NAGA has been fighting the good fight help Native-themed sports teams preserve their Native identities with an emphasis on education. At the professional level, NAGA wrote an amicus brief in support of the Washington Redskins NFL franchise. At the collegiate level, NAGA is fighting the return of the Fighting Sioux name and the symbol at UND, as well as lobbying for new, authentic traditions for the Illinois Fighting Illini. At the primary school level, NAGA has been instrumental in assisting schools across the country to retain their long-cherished Native identities. This is a mission NAGA continues to aggressively engage. Over the course of 2019, NAGA has been lobbying several state senators to pass legislation which preserves Native American names, images, and other honorifics in the public sector. And then, although our official mission is to promote education through respectful use of Native names and imagery in sports, our passion is for helping the many real needs of Indian country. One of the most challenging things about being on virtually is the lack of public in-person input. We've talked about how there has been well over 1,000 emails, and we have endeavored to read all of them. I did pull a couple of them to try and give everyone a flavor of what we're doing and what's going on in Anderson Township and in our district. And I'm going to start with with two from people who are outside, and that's outside of our district. One thing I would like to say is there's been question on where are all these emails coming from. The vast majority of them have names and addresses on them, all in Anderson Township. But I'm going to start with two that are outside, and one is again from these two organizations, and having been through this before, they are, to be fair, bitterly opposed with each other, and they're both Native American organizations, and from all of my research on it, they don't like each other very much, and so I will go with we had an email from each one of them. One is from Eunice Davidson, a Dakota Sioux, and I apologize. I'm going to, on all of these, I'm going to kind of condense them down. The advantage of email, as I found, is that you can write as much as you want. There's no 3-minute hard stop, which does allow people to get more in depth on their thoughts. So, Aho, greetings, Anderson School Board. I would like to have the opportunity to offer some thoughts for your consideration. Where I am a full-blooded American Indian with all the papers to prove this fact, it does not give me special rights or a superior status when voicing my concerns. As an elder of my tribe, Spirit Lake Sioux Nation in North Dakota, who has spent my life on or within 7 miles of reservation with daily contact, again, it does not make me special. Then she outlines her history that goes back into the 1700s. And then I know you've been bombarded with APA, NCAI, media publications, but have been fighting this fight since 2008 and even visiting your community. I know the manipulations, distortions, and outright falsehoods they bring to your community as they attempt to label you racists and bigots. These labels fit them more closely than your community. Keep in mind that with all the opposition to remove our names and images, 80 to 90% of American Indians are okay or have pride in the use of our names, our Indian names and images. Every poll that was done since 2014, from Annenberg to Sports Illustrated and the Washington Post, who did 2 polls in 2016 and 2019, the numbers didn't change over 2 decades. American Indians in this country still stand by using our names and images. My own tribe, Spirit Lake, voted on the Sioux name in 2009, an overwhelmingly majority of 67% to keep the name of the University of North Dakota. Now, and again, I'm going to be going back and forth on these because this shows that there are 2 sides to all of this. I apologize. Is my volume better now? Anyone?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Now what I'm going to now I've got them all messed up. So we have received a lot of email from alumni, both recent alumni and distant alumni. I'm going to read some email. So again, I wish that we could stand and have a open session where we have people come up to the mic and speak their piece. Fortunately, we do have email, so I tried to pick some from each side to give an idea of what we're reading and what the state of our community is. I will not say the names of the people, as I did not, in most cases, I couldn't reach out to them to find out, although they are obviously public record. Good evening. I'm writing to urge changing in the Anderson High School mascot logo and name. I graduated in 1988 from Anderson High School. It is past time to change the school's mascot. There has been a nationwide effort to change the mascots that use words like Redskins and other mascots and logos based on the Native American culture. No matter the original intention, it is time for the Anderson Redskins mascot needs to end. Negative impacts to Native American people and to all students, regardless of racial and ethnic identity, are real. In 2005, and some of these I picked because there was some other information that we could talk about of what's going on in the world, what's going on in the world in the last 15 years. So in 2008, the NCAA initiated a policy against hostile and abusive names, logos, and mascots derived from Native American culture. They did implement an exception for those institutions that hold established agreements with particular tribes, like the Seminoles and the Utes and the Illini. Anderson does not hold an agreement established with a particular tribe or tribes. I graduated from Anderson High School, and I'm not a Redskin. I urge you to change the mascot logo and name. And then she gives some ideas. In contrast, we have one from 6 hours ago that says, as I look back on my years in Anderson High School, I can say 100% that I'm a proud Redskin. I never have thought the name Redskin was derogatory in any way. Today, I still consider myself a proud Anderson High School Redskin and still do not consider the Redskin name derogatory. I think it is a shame that the board is considering this issue again after dealing with it a few years ago. Why is the board listening to a few minority people when the majority want the name to stay the same? And pray that Forest Hills Board of Education can see through this issue and keep the Anderson Redskins mascot. The school district doesn't have the money to rebrand a new mascot, especially with the state funding cuts to the district due to COVID-19. Don't give in to the minority. If you do, we will need to find new school board members come the election cycle, as you will not be wisely using our tax dollars. And I'll do two more here. There's plenty more, but dear Forest Hill School Board members, for years I waited to wear the uniform. I saw the girls flipping and flying through the air. I wanted to be that girl. I wanted to wear that uniform. So as an 11-year-old, I quite literally jumped in. I practiced with more intensity than I've ever known for 2 years to make that team. I still remember where the roster was hanging when I found out I made the cut. I could not have been more proud of that uniform. I was finally a Redskin. I wore the Redskin uniform for 6 years, cheer, gymnastics, and junior high track. I graduated as the captain of 2 varsity sports wearing that uniform. I loved Anderson so much that I returned on and off as an assistant coach, and now I live here so that my children can go to this exemplary school, just as their mother and grandfather did. I love the Redskins so much that when Native Americans came to Forest Hills in 1999, I sat in Titus Auditorium and encouraged Anderson to make the right decision, keep the Redskin name. I listened proudly as people got up on stage, one after another, with their heads held high, stating that what the Redskin name has meant to them. I was 16 years old. Fast forward a couple decades. What has changed? My exposure. I taught in a Title I school in the south side of Atlanta for 6 years. I went back to school to earn my PhD in human development and learn more about family diversity. I taught education at UC, where we covered ways in which Native American history is manipulated and largely erased by the American education system. I teach developmental courses at Miami, and I do not list all these milestones to be a pat on the back. I listed them because they have changed my perspective. I no longer see the Redskin name through the lens of Anderson High School. I see it through the eyes of my students, colleagues, community members that I've worked with over the past 20 years since graduating. Although it may not appear so, this was a hard letter to write. My 13-year-old self would be appalled. How dare you make a fuss about this? Those Redskin uniforms were perfect. But I'm proud to say that my younger self has learned and is still learning about how to be a better human through respect, education, and some critical independent thinking. I may not be behind the Redskin name anymore, but I certainly can ascribe to Anderson's mantra. Today, this letter represents my efforts to be better. I hope you feel compelled to do the same. One from yesterday, the mascot has been addressed 3 times in the past 20 years. It was addressed as recently as 2018. Some reasonable changes have been made. The board obviously has some very big challenges ahead of it relating to schooling in the era of COVID-19. It would not be fair to the students, the staff, and the citizens of the district to spend any more time on this topic when there are so many more pressing issues in front of the Forest Hill School District. I am highly in favor of the status quo for at least another 4 years. Anything else from the board caving into pressure from a persistent minority that seems not willing to take no for an answer. I could make several arguments in favor of the present treatment of the high school mascot, but given that this subject was debated thoroughly just 2 years ago, I think that would be a waste of everyone's time. I suggest that you listen to all the testimony about this, that you especially favor that of the residents of Forest Hill School District, and then bury the issue. So we can see there is, and then there, and I'll have the one last one. No, my computer froze. So there is a wide variation, and the things that I've learned as I've gone through this, the Redskins is the entire reason for having Redskins is because it is a strong something that people look up to. One of the things I hung my hat on 2 years ago is that there are 3 high schools of Native Americans who choose to use Redskins as their name. Now, looking in deeper in that, and to be, again, full transparency in what I found is that at least 2 of the principals, while they're fully proud of the Redskins that's on the side of their stadium, they note that they're the Native Americans and they should do that, and that they're not necessarily supportive overall. The one other, so there's been 3 major studies that have been out about asking Native Americans about their opinion. There was 2 one in 2016, Washington Post, that showed 90% of self-identified Native Americans felt that Redskins was fine. 2019, there was the Washington Post repeated it and found that 68% also found it was, or they were unaffected by it. And then Berkeley just now in 2020 found that between 57 and 67% did find offense. So there's numbers to support your argument on either side. Some of the things though that I wanted to address that from both sides, I'm going to see if I can actually annoy both sides. First is that there has been some concern that having Redskins on your college application keeps you out of college. There's been no evidence of that. I've talked to some people that are at very prestigious universities, and that hasn't been it. Now, to be fair, again, people say when they go there, they feel self-conscious wearing their Redskins attire. My research, and this is just as a school board member in Anderson Township, about the Redskins name, because that comes up again and again. From what I can tell, it is due to the fact that some Indians painted themselves red before going into battle. And NCAI does say that it's from the scalps of Indians. The research I've seen on it has said otherwise on that. Now I don't know how it factors into all of this. And then one thing that has come up about people not moving into our district, we have a wonderful township, Anderson Township. Our houses sell very quickly. I don't dispute that there may be people that don't want to move here because of the high school name, but there are a lot of people, I'd say the majority of people move here because of the school district. So that's my speech on it. there's obviously, I mean, this is a passionate issue. Everyone is correct in that we have big issues in front of us right now, gigantic issues. Even the people who most passionately said, hey, why are you dealing with this? Well, there's 1,000 reasons why we're dealing with this. It is an important topic. We have arguably more important topics like getting our kids back into school safely, dealing with budget cuts. We've gotten 0 emails on any of those. We get 1,200 on this. So it's important, and that's one of the reasons that we're doing what we're doing right now, is having a special meeting to discuss this. If we're in a good spot now, I'd like to move on to the next part, which is cost associated with this. I had one email. There's a lot of emails. Many of them address the cost, and they do it in 2 different ways. One is there's never a bad time or to do the right thing. The other, regardless of the cost. The other way is, hey, you have a lot of costs and you don't have the money for this, and you won't have the money for this in the near future. So, the looking over different places that have changed, the numbers are all over. Teton High School out in Idaho, their cost was about $40,000 when they got down to it. They didn't have, I don't believe they're as large as we are. And I'm trying to pull up Scott here. Actually, Elizabeth, why don't I drop this over to you from 2018, some of the, or what you learned in 2018.
What? Which one?
On the cost issue of what a name change costs.
Oh, so I can't share my screen. It didn't work right. That's why I had to send my stuff to Adam.
All right.
Yeah. Our 2018.
So Scott, Forrest, while you're looking for that, I just wanted to make mention that a good number of people are willing to donate their time and their money. I know you've all read the same emails I read. And so people are willing to help,
Well, am I on?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
That's good because we don't have the money. So,
Elizabeth, is there a particular document that you're looking for that I turned my camera off so I could try to, is there a particular document?
We have a replacement cost document that I'm looking at. I just don't know how to bring it up.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've been accused in the past of using that as an excuse, but at the end of the day, I'm pretty conservative when it comes to spending this kind of stuff, and we do not have extra money for this. So when it comes down to it, what do you do when you're in a situation like this? You look for ways to get the money, and an option that we have locally is always private funding. And so I've told the same story to every person who's asked me about this. If there's a way to get it done privately, then by all means, it should present itself. Because, and somebody mentioned Adidas this week, that they heard Adidas offered to do it and they didn't want strings attached. I have not heard that at all. We have not received an email like that. At least I haven't. When we're referring to donations or private money, we are talking about actual citizens of Forest Hills. We are talking about people who believe so much in a cause that they would put their own money behind it. And we had someone step up.
So the Adidas has Adidas does have a program from 2015 to assist with the costs associated with it. Although when I looked at that, it all looks like it's in 2015. I don't know if that's still a program, and it looked more for design and things along those lines.
We
But
did
but
have an
our
offer.
costs, there are, go ahead.
I was gonna say we did have someone offer to do the logo for free.
Right, and there, yeah. So we've had community members that have offered. The costs associated with it are, there are big one. There are uniforms that are replaced every 3 to 5 years. There are bigger things, the end zone, the basketball court, and some things along those lines. That those are the bigger ticket expenses. So I will reiterate what Elizabeth said, though, is the district does not have funds, and we do have, to the concerns of many and about about other issues. I mean, not only are the funds, but we have the pool, and I'll bring that up. We have a significant issue with the Anderson pool. We don't have funds for that. We don't have funds to change, and anything that that we do moving forward has to take that into account. But there are ideas. To be fair, that I think one time they said it was going to be over $1 million, and that would be as if you changed everything immediately, all at once, which I guarantee you we're not doing. So,
I found
any
the
else have
2018.
anything?
Yeah, the 2018 total was between 450 and 600,000, with or without the gym floor. I just had it pulled up. I can email that to anybody who needs it. And again, that is if you did it all at once. One of the things that somebody suggested along the way the past few weeks was that there could be a way to take current uniforms and just change the logo that's on them, that there have been offers from seamstresses who are willing to help with that. So I have a feeling if we dig into the weeds, it's going to work itself out. But I'll say the same thing here in front of everybody. We cannot spend a penny of district money on this. We just cannot. We don't have it. That is strictly for education, and especially at a time like this when everything is so uncertain. So you can be amazed at what people hold together and do when they know that there's a cause they believe in, and so that's really what we're going to have to rely on here if we decide to do this. Anyone else want to comment on?
I will comment on it. It goes to planning, and if you do something like this, you should have the funds secured before forcing a change. The school's going to be responsible for the funding should this actually get passed and the funds were not sufficient that are raised. It's going to be now the burden of the school because you made the change, you officially adopted the change, so you really are the ones responsible. And so then the other thing is this: are you going to leave the school with no name for however long it takes to achieve that? So what I'm really concerned about is, we've been out of school 6 months now. It's going to be hard for all the kids going back, right? We all have concern about their mental health of just not being out in the world like they are used to. So now Anderson students get to come back with everything else going on. We don't even know what is going to be back. And now you strip this away from them, and now you have nothing. So they don't have anything to go back to. And I just go, the care team is charged with trying to do your best to support students. I'm concerned that you're just leaving them out in the wind.
Yeah, I that's why I wouldn't have picked this timing for that reason alone. That's the one reason I wouldn't have brought this up right now. But we are where we are. So I hope we can talk through this because I think we need to.
Elizabeth.
Let me just make a comment real quick. We've been talking about a phased in process. So we're not going to do this all at once. We can start with paint. You want me to pay for paint? I'll pay for paint. I'm willing to donate, but we just can't sit back and do nothing and say, wait. It's not right. It's not right.
Elizabeth.
I do think. Go ahead, Leslie.
I was just going to say, part of my independent research that I did, I kind of looked at what other districts who have made the change have done. And a lot of them seem to do that, where it was sort of phased in. And I looked at, I don't know, maybe 10 different districts. But I also submit that that's not encompassing of everything, but it seemed like that was the best practice, essentially, was to sort of remove things that are removable, and then kind of go from there, because even a wealthy district, this would be an immense cost to. So that was just, I just wanted to add that that's one thing that I kind of looked at to try to identify what some best practices were for making a transition like this and how it would affect costs. And that's from the small picture that I looked at. It seemed like the approach that most of them were taking.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because some of the emails we have received have been along the lines of, it needs to all be gone immediately. It needs to be wiped out and destroyed. And I think that's some of the tension that the community is feeling. Some people are already feeling like it's being ripped away from them. And so everyone deserves respect in this situation, everyone. And that approach, it's interesting because it does show them more respect. It lets it stay, and it does it more gently. But at the same time, you're going to have people who say, why would you allow it? If you believe it's offensive, why would you allow it even for a minute? So these are some things that are happening in this tension that I think we need to not be afraid to talk about. It's our job to figure out how to navigate that, because I've heard both of those sides.
And I think too that there will be, I mean, if this process does go through, is to have obviously it's not, I don't believe it's our role to answer every question. That's where steering committees and process committees and branding committees and those type things, and those are things that we have another meeting come up on Thursday, is to think about things along those lines, as well. So if there isn't anything else, I would like to end on an email that we actually just got on the way in, which I think was very well written, and that kind of encompasses where we are right now. It says, good afternoon. I spent my entire school education at Anderson and graduated from the class of 1976. I was lucky to have started in the old buildings on Beachmont under the principal guidance of Mr. Maddox. I'm glad they named one of the satellite schools after him. I realize that times have changed, and as a society, we are trying to change with those times to be more politically correct. I am sure that you've had many viewpoints on this subject and may be perplexed as many to do the right thing. I do not envy your decision. Growing up in Anderson Township and having my alma mater in the Forest Hill School District, I came to respect the proud name Anderson Redskins. In my day, we did not see this as an affront to Native Americans, nor an insult to their way of life. We approached the name as one who truly did have to suffer, and not just from the intruding white race. They had to endure a land that was harsh and unforgiving. They had to teach themselves and others how to grow food, how to hunt, and how to build covering to protect them from the harsh weathers. They had to learn from others who were more knowledgeable, teachers, learn how to listen and advise from their elders, counselors, learn to respect the wisdom from the chief, principal, learn that one was not a way to survive, but it took a village to survive, students. The American Indian were a proud people. The people who graduated were a proud group. That being said, I understand how a new generation may see our mascot picture and name, Redskins, as now being potentially racist, maybe even dehumanizing and not reflecting the values of their community. I do not deny with the changing in our social climate, we are looking at every aspect of daily life with new glasses. These are glasses of change, and for thousands of years, change has not come easily and usually has come with a price. How do we honor the past without changing or altering what was the past, or what it was, the past? Can we find a way to honor the brave and strong and first people who want a better and peaceful way of life? Those who are taken advantage of and cheated of their birthright and their heritage. It is not an easy river to forge, but forge we must. I wish I could say that I have a definite keep it or rename it, but I'm not in a position to make that decision. Unfortunately, the responsibility falls upon you. Just know that the classes that graduated in my time, before my time, and after my time believed in what the mascot meant to us. The pride and perseverance of those who came before us, who lived in a better life, a more sacred life, and did what they needed to do so their families could grow and learn and maybe give the next generation a safe place to believe in. I wish you the wisdom and hope that you will be able to make the decision that best can fit our changing time. Thank you for the opportunity to submit my comments. So I'll open it up to anything else. We do have another meeting on the 4th. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I have something else. It actually follows that perfectly. One other thing that I wanted to make sure that we covered is Native American education and what that looks like in our curriculum. If I go back to 2018, there were two big sticking points for me, and one was budget, and the other one was Native American history. Because a lot of the emails that we heard urging us to keep it were from Native Americans who didn't want their image wiped away. They felt like it's being wiped away from our education system. So Scott and Greg, can you guys talk about what this looks like from your perspective? Do we have what is in our curriculum to ensure that this kind of a change isn't wiping that away?
So I think it's a good question, Elizabeth. We would want to make sure that we're considerate of, and I look at this issue and all issues, that we're considerate of all of our students. And certainly the curriculum that we employ throughout our entire district and all of our grade levels will follow to the level that we are required to. But any opportunity that we can utilize to celebrate the individuality and the differences in students, all students in our district, I think we need to take advantage of. And so I'm going to give a general answer to your question, but I think it's a perfect opportunity for us to continue to analyze all of the curriculum resources and curriculum opportunities that we have when we go through our course of study opportunities to look at, are we including diverse material in our classroom that represents the students that are in our buildings, and that represents the students that are in, and a lot of those will happen, intentional changes within our curriculum and with the instructional practices that we're focusing on. Again, that's some of the role of the care team, is not just to focus on one individual or race or culture. It's inclusivity of many cultures. And so part of that is to analyze the current instructional practices and to make change. And I think being intentional about that is really important. That someone spoke on this earlier, that I think it was one of the letters that Dr. Heiss read that said, if you know better, you do better, or changing perspectives so that you can be intentional in including students in underrepresented populations within our community and within the curriculum. So that's certainly a purpose of the care work, to focus on all of our students. And I will say we will be working on a language arts course of study in the near future this year that will have some intentionality to look at how we're incorporating diverse materials within our language arts courses K to 12. So thank you.
Let me just comment on, I appreciate that, Greg. We have a fantastic care team. I mean, they are phenomenal. They look at every area. I've been to their meetings. They care about all kids. And I just think we need to acknowledge their work. You know, it's not just about the letter that they sent. They're phenomenal. They're looking behind every nook, under every rug to figure out how we're going to make every student in this district feel loved and cared about. It's all about equality.
That was a very positive outcome of the 2018 I don't even know what you would call it. By the end, it was so nasty, and you could just see the division in the community. And CARES really was an effort to dig into the heart of these schools. I know that they gave books to read, and they're working with the teachers on how do you handle difficult conversations in the classroom. And it would have been tough. Like, say this change had happened in 2018 and there was lots of anger in the high school and the parents are mad and the teachers aren't equipped to have those conversations. That's not going to work. So I feel like change sometimes happens gradually and then sometimes it just happens. And this community has been on a journey. I've seen it for 20 years. The first time I ever heard about this was 1999. And education is at the core of it, because these kids coming up are the next generation and they think differently than I did when I graduated in 1998. They've had a different world to grow up in.
Elizabeth, I just want to follow up and make my own comment somewhat related to what you said. You know, we and Dee Dee too, we are responsible, right, for these kids, and I'm clearly passionate about that. I just want to take a moment to apologize for how emotional I got earlier. I often teach my 7-year-old that we cannot control other people, only ourselves. And I failed, and I admit that, and I apologize for that. I will never apologize for advocating against racism and advocating to amplify the voices of our students and our, and Black, Indigenous people of color as well. But I do apologize for my behavior earlier, and I just want to, as you were speaking, it was just coming back to me, really. I failed earlier in that, and I just want to make sure that I'm vocal and accepting of that. So thanks.
I have another comment. You guys know I go to these weekly town halls from OSBA, and they've had a couple sessions on racial issues. They've had panels, and they've had just discussions. And the one 2 weeks ago, they had someone who spoke, and he recommended they do offer. I mean, this what you can find out in the world. They have professional consulting services. Have we considered hiring a professional consulting service that comes from the outside, has no ties to our district, and does an assessment for the entire district? And that's what they're supposed to do in light of what's going on. That's kind of an option. Of course, you have to pay for it. It is a consulting service. But the question is, that's why I think we're here today, correct? That we feel that we are not being sensitive, we are not being welcoming to everybody. So the question is, I mean, that's why I was asking about, with the studies before. I mean, formal studies. That's what I'm kind of looking for. That kind of data is the real documentation on that is we want to fix it, but who has all the right answers, right? It's not me, because I'm certainly no racial professional. So it's not me, but I'm looking for that information. Is that even an option?
Scott, can you hear me? Can you respond to that about having experts come in to work with teachers about these issues?
We have an expert. We work with Hamilton County ESC. We have an individual who comes and works with our district that provides these services. It's called 1 Degree Shift. Catrice Kate is the person who comes to us. She is known in the area for her expertise in this area, and I know that she has affiliations with local colleges that she works with, and she also does research on a national level in regard to this. I know that because of her work in our district and this issue in many of the districts in Hamilton County, the Educational Service Center is expanding their platform, so to speak, in regard to culture, inclusivity, and other things related to safe and secure environments where students feel comfortable in their environment, and building capacity for teachers to be able to deal with the issues that present themselves when we have diverse populations of students in our schools, regardless of the color of their skin, the resources that their parents have, the accessibility that they have with technology. All of those things are part of the conversation, and many of those things are part of the care conversation. And Patty talked about a study or a conversation that happened with kids in 2018. That was the start of the care work, because those conversations came from a very, very diverse set of students in our school system. And that began the care work and the selection of books and the selection of professional development and the selection of conversations that needed to happen among our staff. And so, no, it was not a scientific study that had data that came to us in categorized fashion, but it did give us the perceptual data that our students are experiencing in their schools. Now, prior to that, we used Gallup polls, and Gallup polls are scientific polls. We purchased those in the school district. We've made budget cuts. We had to streamline, and we've moved away from them. We've kept the same questions, but for that scientific methodology and that third-party organization, all of that information that came back to us from Gallup and that we still use is utilized in our buildings on their strategic vision plans that they make each year. So students randomly respond to questions. Do I feel comfortable in my school? Do I feel like I have an advocate in my school? Do I feel like I have a peer friend? Is there an adult that I can talk to? Is my voice heard in my school? Is my teacher, are the things that I'm learning representing me and my culture and in the person that I am? And that information comes back. And it does provide us with information about what we should be thinking about in individual buildings. That information goes to the principal, it's discussed with teachers, and then it starts the plan, the individual plan within the building. Now, CARE is working with all of the individual buildings on their individual plans regarding that information and other perceptual information, parental conversations, things that are coming out of how well certain groups of students are accessing the curriculum, learning the curriculum, mastering the curriculum. All of that comes into play, and CARE has been looking at all that. And so outside of our school, sometimes people say it's just not moving fast enough. But it is a very difficult situation given the fact that there is so much information and we have a small body of people taking that information and then trying to develop professional development that is meaningful across our district. And what we want to make sure of in our organization is that we do not have pockets of professionals who have more information than others, who have a higher capacity to be able to deal with issues. So we're trying to educate all of our staff together with common professional development guided by the outside source, and then utilizing that in individual buildings, and then monitoring the plans of the individual buildings and helping to design the plans of all the buildings and reviewing the information that's coming back, the feedback that's coming back. So, to Patty's point, when you go with a third-party company and they are a scientific-based company, it can be very expensive. But I will say to you that in the local area, there are individuals who are interested in partnering with us. So you go to our partnership development programming that we're doing, where we're instilling the experts in our own community to try to help us with some of these things. But that's what we're doing. That's what we've been doing for 3 years now. And I think that it is evolving, and based on what we're seeing out of CARE, it is influencing, and it is having a positive impact across our entire school district.
Thank you, Scott.
I have one more question. The one thing that's been in the emails consistently that we haven't brought up that I feel like needs to be on the table, why not Turpin? Why wouldn't we touch Turpin right now?
Is that for me?
It's for anybody, because the purpose of this meeting is so that everyone can see that we are getting through things and talking about things, and that's a question that's been asked that we haven't talked about. So
I think that's one of the things that people listening in need to try to understand. When issues come to board members and when they come to administrations, there are various positions. And we have to consider the issue at hand right now and deal with the one that's on our plate. The Spartans, to my knowledge, and I've only been in the district for 5 years, have never been brought up in this discussion. And so now, for them to kind of come in from the side in this discussion with all the conversations we've had about cost and about all the things we're doing with care, I'm hopeful that if that is a question that our community has, that it is a genuine question, that it is meant as a reflective question and not an opportunity to distract the conversation that we have on the table right now. And so I can't comment on the Spartans this evening because we do not have nearly the volumes of information that we have been provided over the years on this particular issue. But that seems to be something that has come up now in the discussion. And so I think we need some more time to take a look at that one.
Thanks.
Okay,
I
well,
think
we
the
have
only other
a,
comment that I was going to make, though, I would very much like to see this the Redskin name change on the ballot in November, where we can assign an appropriate millage for it. And I think that way we'd have some time to plan, assess, understand the costs, and what the alternatives are. And if the name change gets passed in November, then at least we have an answer for the district. The public had participation in it, and we actually have the funding. And we changed the name with the whole buy-in of the community. So that kind of helps cover, for me, that hits like 3 high points.
Patty, that's totally against everything we talked about. We can't wait. We can't wait. It has to be done. I mean, putting it off, having a vote.
You can't do it really right now.
We will work on that little by little. We've talked about that.
But I mean, that's the whole point about the planning. You actually, we talked, Elizabeth, you just mentioned it yesterday. You really need to consider everything, and the financial part is a component of it. So before you can make an informed decision, you do have to have a pretty strong idea of where all the pieces are going.
I think that's a delay tactic. I'm against that.
okay, well, that's why we're having this discussion.
Okay, well, I'm against it going right now, but that's where we are.
Forrest, just
Leslie?
really a real quick comment. First of all, I think we know putting it on the ballot is not, you're asking people to vote on accepting a commonly accepted racial slur. We're not doing that, one. And two, we also get funding from the state. So wouldn't that mean that everyone in Ohio should be able to get to vote on Anderson High School's mascot? And three, what about the students who are not 18 years old who have written in and poured out their hearts? Their voices do matter. And they are not 18 years old and are not afforded the luxury of voting in November either. I mean, I think we all know that is a very complicated point that unfortunately has some fallacies built into it. And again, it's almost moot from my perspective. And as Dee Dee said, from everything we have said tonight, this is about the use of racial stereotypes, the use of racial slurs, and we cannot vote on what we are willing to accept. Can everybody see that cartoonish thing in the Anderson High School? I'm sure we have some paint in a shed somewhere that is not an additional cost. I agree with Patty that we need to do research. In fact, actually to the Turpin point, I've reached out to a couple of experts with PhDs who study that era to why not, right? Get a report and fully understand it from experts. But best practices are showing that the phase out approach or phase in, however you want to phase it, is the best practice. So there's a lot of moving parts to what we're talking about right now, basically.
And I think that's part of the process, and that's part of the process that we're going through now. If there's a change and when there's change, in other places, there is a more of an extended process that involves more than the 9 or 8 people on the screen as far as the community goes, and multi-levels where it's more than a bucket of paint, but it's true full involvement, and having that involvement of the community, and I'll just, as this is a discussion. This is about as classic a board discussion we have. We obviously have different viewpoints on these things. To the point of having voters vote, I personally, these are the big decisions that we're supposed to make. That's and my feeling is that we have a lot of big decisions to make, and we make them. As painful as it can be. I mean, that's what we're elected to do, and that's what we're doing now, as we're going through all of this, analyzing the information, all of it, both sides, what the effects are, what potential remedies there are, and how we move forward. Along that line, I mean, we do have another meeting coming up in 2 days on Thursday. I do encourage more input from the community. I think we've had over 1,000 people on this tonight. I appreciate everyone coming in, and I think we'll continue doing our research and come back at it on Thursday. Does that sound like a plan? Yes. No. Okay. All right. Does anybody else have anything else you'd like to bring up?
Should we explain why there's no vote or anything? Because there was a lot of confusion out there about that.
No, this was a discussion meeting, and or a meeting to discuss and as we noticed it was, meaning as in the notice, that's what we discussed, or we had, was a discussion. There's no mention of that, of having a resolution tonight, and in fact we don't. So we will continue the process going into Thursday.
Actually, I have one more question. There is
Yes.
a resolution. Did that get modified, or is that
There
still in place?
is no resolution.
Oh,
No, there is. I mean, that's we did.
then how do
Dee
we
put
talk
out a
about the
resolution,
language?
right. It's, as I understand it, there's no resolution on the next agenda.
Okay.
And that was, yeah, I mean, that's, Dee had a resolution, and that is not part of the next agenda.
Yeah, there was a draft. So board stuff is complicated. And because we can't talk, and we have to talk one-to-one, the last 2 weeks were so difficult. I mean, you each know that because we had to find time to talk to each other. And so from what I understand, and Dee Dee, you can clarify, Dee Dee drafted something and sent it to, I don't even know who saw it. And it wasn't, there wasn't going to be, what's the right word? Consent, or not consent.
Well, I sent it to every board member separately.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some things that some of the board members didn't agree with. And that's okay. That's okay. So we just kind of put it aside. That's basically it.
Yeah, from what I understood from the back and forth conversations, the goal here isn't, like everyone, one of the reasons I brought this up is some people in the community think that this is trying to be forced through and pushed through. That's not the part of anyone here. I have not seen that. I've seen some passion, yes, rightfully so. I think there should be passion, not forcefulness. There's been respect, even among these board members. And so what happened with the resolution was just that. It was, we couldn't really agree on what it should be, and so Dee Dee said, okay, let's just keep talking. And that's honestly how a healthy board works.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what Thursday looks like, but
we'll find out at 4 o'clock.
Forrest, what does the meeting announcement technically say for Thursday? Do you know?
On Thursday, we are discussing Thursday we can do everything from discuss all the way to vote on a motion. We have the ability to make or take action if the board so desires. All right, anything else? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the special meeting for the Redskin name discussion.
You get a second?
Second,
Ms. Cropper?
Mrs. Taylor,
Yes.
Ms. Choice,
yes.
Mrs. Barber,
Yes.
Dr. Rasmussen,
Yes.
Dr. Heights.
Yes. Thank you, everybody, for